All right.
Okay.
So the first beep. So what was that experience?
Um, so I was very much distracting myself with work today. So a lot of these are about work. I'm
Mm,
apologies if it's boring, but anyway, beep one was at 11:14 a.m. Um, I was sort of mindlessly making copy changes to a design that I was working on, but in the moment that the beep was going off, I was saying in my head something. I was saying I would like to do a handover call with whoever will be making design edits in the future. That's what I was like. I was like imagining myself on a Zoom call saying that about the design that I was working on. Sorry, it's really loud. It
It
sounds
might
like
be me.
wind.
some use wind.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Anyway, so I'm not, I think it was at the end of the sentence that beeped, but basically I was kind of imagining a conversation that I was having with the client that I was doing the work for.
Mm,
So I was saying that in my own voice in my head, and then I was picturing like small little Zoom squares of their faces. So of the two
mm,
clients, so it was the guy's name is Doug and the other girl's name is Bevan. Um, so kind of a lot of things happening at once. I'm looking at my computer screen. I'm
mhm.
mindlessly doing design work, but not really super focused on it. And I was almost sort of like rehearsing what I was going to say to them in the call that I'd be presenting the work. So looking at my screen, I'm saying I would like to do a handover with whoever's going to be making future
Uh,
edits. So that's auditory. And then I'm visually picturing their faces, but it's like a little Zoom square, two Zoom squares, not like a full scene.
okay.
It's a bit
So
going on.
I got it frozen for a little part of that, but I'll just
Okay.
kind of repeat what I got. Um, so, so you're imagining a Zoom call with Doug and Bevan and their Bevan or Bevan?
Bevan, Bevan.
Bevan and their faces in Zoom squares, and you're kind of rehearsing, saying in your head, um, something about a handover call. What was that specifically?
Yeah, basically I'm designing a menu for a restaurant
Mhm,
that's opening, and it's a template so that they can make edits in the future.
mhm,
So what I was saying was that whoever is going to be making edits, whether the GM of the restaurant or the chef or whoever, I was telling the client, so Bevan and Doug, who work for a hospitality agency, they're separate from the
mhm.
restaurant. I was telling them that I would like to speak with someone in the restaurant who will be working with the menu template on a regular basis.
Okay. Um, and do you remember the exact words that you were English speaking?
Um, I think I got the full sentence in before it beeped. So the words that I was speaking, I guess, right at as the beeper was going off would have been edits in the future.
That it's in the future.
Hmm.
Um, would it make sense for you experientially to count that as the experience, or would it make sense with more context, like what came before it?
I would say if I had to rank experientially, it would be the words. So, like, I would like to speak. I would like to do a handover call with whoever will be making design edits in the future,
Okay.
and we can shorten that to just design edits in the future. So the words were primary.
Okay.
The Zoom squares were secondary, and then like my experience, like I was doing the work, but it's very mindless. So my what I was actually looking at on the screen, I don't feel like I was really very present
Okay.
in.
So
I
it's
was more thinking about the words because I was actually kind of nervous to have this conversation because they're being quite annoying. um, so
could you give percentages to um, like the visual thing, seeing the clients in the Zoom call, the visual computer screen that's actually in front of you, and the voice in your head? Like, could you give percentages to?
yeah, I would say like The voice is probably 50%, and then the faces are 25, and the action of the work that I was doing on my computer screen is 25. So,
Okay.
like, yeah. The faces, normally I have really detailed visuals that pop into my head. These were like kind of blurry and small, and it wasn't a full scene. It was literally just the two squares. So it wasn't super focused on them, but I did know at least it was their two faces, if that makes sense.
Okay. Um, so I guess let's start with the most present thing. So I would like to do a handover call with whoever's making edits in the future. And you said that's your voice in your head. Is that more metaphorically, or does it have like a physical location?
My voice.
Yeah, like for some people it might be literally in their head, and for some people
Mm,
that might just mean, oh, it's metaphorically like just speaking to myself.
I would say it's, I'm not speaking it out loud, but I am, it's definitely, it's in my head, but it sounds exactly like my voice. It sounds like how I would say it on a Zoom
Okay,
call.
how your voice, as you would say it. Any particularities with the tone or pitch or anything, or no?
I think because it was a work thing, I was like the tone, I guess, was kind of more professional.
Mhm.
um,
And and is this more about just the words, or more about the meaning, or more about rehearsing what to say? Or
I think it was more about the meaning because I'm starting to get particularly frustrated with this client. So I think the potentially the reason why my brain even went here in the first place is because I'm trying to minimize myself doing extra work in the future.
Mhm.
So it was like a general sentiment of being, I guess, sort of disgruntled or annoyed. And then this was me trying to like mitigate extra work in the future or come up with a solution. And sometimes when I'm nervous about having particular conversations, I will like rehearse them in my head.
Okay. And is there a frustrated feeling at this moment, or is that more kind of just the general context that this comes out of?
General context, like I'm not actively upset or angry or anything.
Okay. And is this more like, if we use this tape recorder metaphor, like you're speaking into a tape recorder, or more like you're pressing play and hearing it playing back and hearing these words?
Uh,
Or
this
does
one
that not
felt,
make sense?
no, it makes sense. Yeah. I think this one felt like I was speaking.
Okay, so more like speaking. And any other questions from Mel or Russ about this voicey part before we move on?
Kerry, you said at one point something that I could have meant that you're. It felt like at the moment of the beep I was saying just edits in the future, or it could have meant I was saying I would like to do a handover call to whoever is going to make the edits in the future, and the beep happened to come at edits in the future.
Hmm.
So the question is, does it seem like sort of one long thing with the beep at the end, or does it seem like a piece and another piece and another piece, and the piece that happens to be there is edits in the future?
Yeah, no, I definitely was saying the sentence as one long thing, and the beep went off like towards the end of the sentence. So I wasn't sure if I should include the whole sentence or not.
Got it.
But it was definitely one long,
Okay.
complete, full sentence.
Okay. Then I'm good.
Yeah. From my perspective, since the sentence kind of has a meaning, and since that was, seems like it was part of your experience, like even though the sentence is long, like it would make sense to include all of it as the sample.
Got it. Yeah,
Um,
cool.
so yeah, that's what I think. But for other experiences, it might make sense to just include one word if it was really just more about that word experientially. It's up to you pretty much.
Cool.
So you're mentally seeing Doug and Bevan in Zoom squares, and you mentioned this was blurry or not so distinct, or can you describe this part?
Yeah, I would say not completely in focus. Like, I feel like normally when I recall like visual thoughts, I can give you really niche details. I can't tell you what they were wearing or what Bevan was doing with her hair in this moment. Like normally I would be able to provide those details, but it just felt like kind of a little bit blurry, fuzzy, but I could tell, like, or you know when you look at something and you blur your eyes? It's like that. So you can kind of, you know what you're looking at, but it's just not super sharp. That's kind of how I would describe it. And it felt smaller, whereas normally, or not normally, sometimes a visual thought for me is like more immersive.
So does it, can I interrupt here for a minute? Does it seem like you're looking at Zoom squares and the Zoom squares happen to have Devin and Bevan in it? Or does it seem like you're looking at Doug and Bevan who happen to be in Zoom squares?
I would say maybe Zoom squares first and foremost that happen to have them in it. Just because, like, I could see the edge of the square. I could see the name written. Like, that was kind of, that detail of it being on Zoom was more important than the actual, or I guess more in focus than the actual, people.
Could you see, like, the computer around it, or was that not part of this?
No, literally just two squares, like, or I guess technically rectangles right next to each other. Small, out of focus.
And when you say out of focus, that's like literally a bit blurry, or do you mean just like it doesn't have as much detail as some other images?
Kind of both. Normally I can take stock of like the detail in the background or what, or, you know, I feel like, I don't know, the rug or something, like, or I don't know, like the detail behind whatever I'm looking at. But there wasn't a lot of detail to look at, and it was kind of a little bit fuzzy.
Okay. Is there a part that's more fuzzy? The faces or the bodies or the...
I would say the only thing that was really crisp or in focus would be the edges of the Zoom square, like the curved edges were really clear. But everything else just looked like it had like a blurry layer over it.
Okay.
Or everything within the box, sorry.
And when you said it was small, like again, that could be metaphorically, since there wasn't so much detail, like it seemed small to you, or did it literally visually appear small?
I would, like, it feels small because I'm still looking at my screen, which is probably dominating most of my visual view, but I'm looking at the right side of the screen and focused on that, but on the left side, like, which naturally is smaller than what I'm looking at more broadly, is where the Zoom squares were. So it's like, it's definitely smaller and, kind of fit within my field of vision.
So they're over the left side of your screen, kind of like overlaid, or
I would say, yeah, overlaid, but again, it's not, I can still see past it, because I'm aware that it's not real. So yes, overlaid, but also it's kind of hard to describe because I can technically see past that.
You remember your sample of you're in the street and there's a car going across and you can still see the car vividly, but you also know that it's not real and you know what's behind it?
Yeah.
Could you compare this to that? Is it similar? Or?
This was, I mean, it's similar in that concept of overlay in that, like, I know that it's not real, but it's different in that this felt way less dominant of a visual. Like the car, I was really focused on that because I was thinking about my car that I was imagining, and I was focused on it. But for this instance, like, yes, it's overlaid in a similar way, and yes, I'm aware it's not real, but I'm less focused on it because I was more focused on the words that I was saying to them.
Russ or Mel, do you have questions about this part?
I'm good.
And now for the part of like visually looking at the screen. At first it seemed like it wasn't really present at all in your awareness, and then you said it was maybe as present as like the mental image of the Zoom call. So what was that part like, or is it hard to say?
Yeah, when I'm making copy edits, it's really easy to do while not really focusing on it. It's just copying and pasting updated text. So I was present in that my hands were on my laptop and I was doing the work. I was moving the text over into the appropriate areas.
Okay.
But I was much less focused on that actual action, I guess.
Because from my perspective, there's the possibility that even though you're doing this action and you're doing it skillfully, it's still possible that it could be kind of going on automatically and not the main part of your awareness. Do you think that that's possible here, or do you think it was part of your awareness, but just a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I put it at 25 because I feel like any lower than that, I'm like, how am I even working? You know? If it's at 10%, how am I doing the work? But maybe that is possible.
Yeah. I think that's at least a possibility we can hold because, yeah, that it is possible to be doing something skillfully, even something very complicated, but not have it take up so much of your awareness. Any questions about this from anybody?
I'm good.
All right. Number 2?
Cool.
Or Mel? Anybody?
Mel, would you? Oh, you are muted. So the waterfall sound. I don't know who that's coming from.
I could mute my mic for now. Maybe that'll help.
Didn't change anything.
Oh, I wonder if it's mine. Let me try.
Yeah, it is yours.
No.
It's okay.
Maybe.
It's a gentle
Okay.
waterfall, not a rushing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not Niagara.
I thought it was my laptop, like, dying, like, working overtime.
Well, yours is definitely making noise too.
Yeah, well, that's why I keep turning myself up.
Yeah. I wish I could mute myself, but kind of crucial that I don't.
I guess. Okay, Kerry, number 2.
Okay, beep 2 was at 11:48. I was reading basically a chart of different paper sizes, so like A3, A4, A5, because I was getting the specs for it. So as I was reading out loud, A5, 5.83 inches by 8.27 inches is what I was reading when the beep went off. So it was like a line in a chart of measurements.
And is that your entire experience?
Yeah, I was pretty focused on this at this moment, I would say. Yeah, 100% on this because the context was I was trying to work out if this folded menu would fit in a leather-bound booklet, and it was kind of a hard thing. I'm really bad at math, so and it's a really easy thing to mess up. So I was really zeroing in on the measurements.
So tell me again what you were saying.
A5, 5.83 inches by 8.27 inches.
And that's being said aloud?
In my head.
Aloud in your head. So if I were in the room next to you, I would not have heard that? Is that what you mean by that?
Correct. Yeah.
So this is an inner speaking of some sort.
Yes.
Okay. And you're reading it off the page, so it's present there on the page. And so
Correct.
you are saying in your inner voice what you are seeing on the screen.
Yes.
Okay. And is there any particular inflection of that?
Inflection in the tone, or
Yeah. Or anything.
it felt pretty monotone because I was reading like a whole chart of different numbers, so definitely wasn't trying to sound professional or be loud or quiet or anything. It was just it was very monotone.
And is anything in your experience other than the reading? I understand that the context is I'm trying to figure out whether it's going to fit in whatever, but is any of that present to you, or at the moment is it just while I'm reading this? Experientially.
I would say like almost nothing else is in my experience because I was like hunched over my computer looking really intently at this chart and reading in my head, but out loud in my head, very intently. So I honestly don't think anything else was in my experience in this moment.
Okay. And my eyeballs are seeing the chart, because I'm reading it. But in my experience, do I see the chart in my experience, or is it that's just that's the sort of the substrate on which I speak, 5.83 inches by 5.27 inches?
No, I definitely see the chart. I would say, and if I could break it down, I would almost say 50-50 in that like the chart was very much part of the visual, but I still was reading, like saying out loud in my head.
And by the chart, do we mean this line of the chart or the whole chart or the...
This line.
So
I mean, maybe the line before, because I had just read that, but very zeroed in.
So I guess my question is, does it seem like I'm seeing the chart, or does it seem like I'm saying this line that happens to be coming out of the chart?
Okay. Phrasing like that, I would say I'm saying this line that is coming out of the chart. That's how, I think, a better way of wording it probably.
Then I think I'm good.
Is it more about just saying this string of letters and numbers, or is there much meaning there? Any meaning?
I think if I were to draw meaning, it would be around like me trying to put it in the context of this leather-bound book that I'm fitting it into. But in that moment, I don't think I was at that step yet. I think I was really just noting that this was going to be a little bit too small, like based on the numbers.
So do you think noting it was too small was at this moment here, or might have come a little later, or?
That I think came later. Here was really just taking in the information.
Okay. Yeah. More just reading. All right, then I'm good at this one too.
Well, let me make sure that I understood what that line of questioning was about. So I'm understanding that you are not just reading mindless words. You're reading words that have meaning. That this is a semantically meaningful. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm good.
Okay.
The problem with meaning is that it's pretty widely unmeaningful. It's a whole range of things it could possibly be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Then beat 3 was at 12:33. Sorry, my notes are kind of weird on this one. 1 second. Okay, I had 2 things up on my screen. I had the menu copy from the chef, and I had my menu design next to one another, split screen. I was anticipating that there were going to be a lot of changes from the chef, and I was kind of preemptively frustrated. But in this moment, I was realizing that he actually didn't change that much, so it was going to be less work than I thought. So when the beep went off, I was saying, okay, not that bad, in my head. As in, like, oh, okay, this is going to be less work than I thought. That realization, I don't really know how to describe, but my reaction to that realization was, okay, not that bad.
Okay. Will you say this is the realization, or we're now at the reaction to it, or?
This felt like a reaction to it.
Okay. Well, you've already realized, and now you're saying that. Okay. So you're saying, okay, not that bad. In your head, your voice, any particular, anything about the inflection or tone?
This one still felt a little bit monotone, but kind of like a relief, like, oh, okay, not that bad. Like the not that bad monotone, but okay was a little bit more of like a, oh, okay. Like how I would say it in conversation.
Does it have a volume?
Volume? I was speaking probably a little bit more softly than I used to, like than I normally do. I'm not really sure why, but it definitely felt a little bit softer.
Yeah. So is there like a relief feeling, or is it more just speaking,
I think,
or some other feeling? I don't want to like impose.
no, I think like that's why I was, when I said the realization felt separate, because that realization was also a little bit of relief, and then I was kind of reacting to that.
Okay.
But I don't really know how to describe it, realizing.
Okay. It's more about just speaking at this point. And for the tape recorder thing, is it more like speaking into it or playing it back?
This was speaking, yeah.
Okay. And are you also seeing the two menus split screen at this moment, or is that more just general context?
They're both there, but I'm actually more focused on the left side, which is what the chef wrote. Yeah, I would say most of my focus would be split between what's going on in my head, which is the words, and then what I'm looking at, which is the chef's writing in particular.
Could you give a percentage between those two things?
So before you give a percentage, can I take us back to the previous conversation there? It's possible for your eyeballs to be aimed at something and not experience that at all. There's no question about that's possible. And that you could be skillfully dealing with that in the sense that realizing that it's not that bad. And yet have no visual experience of that other than your eyeballs are aimed at it. Mm. And it's also possible to be looking at it and seeing it and recognizing it.
Can you describe what it would be to look at something and not experience it?
You could use the example, like you're sitting on a chair now. Maybe you're feeling that chair, but before we called your attention to it, like it might have just been automatic, something you're doing, but you're not paying attention to it really.
Yeah. Okay. In this example, I would say I'm definitely experiencing the visual of the chef, because I was like actively comparing the text between my design and his edits. and then reading through his edits, and kind of noting in my brain where there were edits and where and how I was anticipating more than there were. So this felt like the visual, looking at his edits felt like it was part of my experience in this moment. But also same with the words.
At this moment, was there a particular edit or set of edits you're looking at, or had you already done that and now you're just more generally looking at the whole thing?
Yeah, I was looking at the starters. Actually, sorry, no. I had initially looked at the starters. There were a lot of edits. In this moment, I was looking at the mains, and the mains had fewer edits. So the starters had a lot, which I was angry about. And then I was specifically looking at the mains with this anticipation, oh, this is also going to be bad. It wasn't, and that's why I said, okay, not that bad. So it was like the second half of the menu that I was specifically focusing on from a visual side.
Are you looking at any specific mains or more just taking in that category?
I was looking at so they have the main, like the title and then ingredients that are in it. So I was specifically looking both at, I think, the ingredients of the halibut, which is niche, and then also but I was also looking at that section and trying to see how many additional menu items had been added because that was going to affect the menu design. So it was I was looking at the detail, but also the blob of text to see how much was there, if that makes sense.
Okay. So is it both the halibut ingredients and also the additional items at the same time, or is it more first one and then the other? Or...
I think it was first the detail, and then my eyes skipped down to the bottom to see what had been also added. But it was almost happening within milliseconds, very close.
Okay. Would you think both of those things would have been during the time it took for you to say, okay, not that bad? Or how do you think the timing is there?
I think the timing would have been me looking at the additional menu items because that was going to have the most impact. And that's what I was reacting to because there were fewer than I thought. Just kidding.
So during the time, so maybe I'll draw you a picture. So I guess this is your experience, and then the beep comes here. And then we could say that this is where you're saying, okay, not that bad.
Yeah.
And so it could be that at the same time you've got halibut and then you have additional menu items. Or it could be that halibut came here and then it was additional items.
Yeah, I would say the latter.
So
halibut there, and then, okay, not that bad when I was reading the additional menu items.
And then, I mean, there's a bunch of other options too. It could be they both came, right? You don't have to stick to just those two options.
Yeah.
But that was to just give you an idea of so, okay, so you think closer to the beep was seeing the additional items as kind of like a blob, or seeing the text but not specifically reading it, just seeing that.
Yeah, I wasn't, from a design perspective, I was more worried about the word count than what those words mean, if that makes sense. Because the word count affects the spacing of the menu items. So by seeing a chunk of text that is smaller than I thought it was going to be, it meant my job was going to be easier. I wasn't necessarily reading, oh, they added salmon. It was more, oh, this chunk of text is smaller and it can fit in the space that I have already allotted for it.
Okay.
So I was drawing meaning from the amount of text, not the words.
So I was looking at the size of the chunk.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this?
So I guess I haven't yet figured out whether I should think of this as what's primarily in my experience is I am saying to myself in the realization that it's not that bad. It's okay, not that bad. Or whether there's some separate realization that leads to or underlies or whatever the saying. So the question is whether it's just a sort of a gestural speaking, oh, it's not that bad, which comes out of the recognition, or whether there is an explicit recognition that is accompanied by the speaking.
I think it's the second one, because there was, like, in that realization, there's a sense of relief, and in that sense of relief, I think is when what the words were reacting to. So, like, the words didn't necessarily feel completely mindless or, like, not part of it. It was, like, I'm reacting to this, like, in a relieved way.
Okay.
Does that
Then
answer your question?
I'm good.
Yeah, that was exactly the same question I was going to ask, so you stole mine.
Alright.
Number 4.
Okay, before this one, there was kind of a bit going on. I was having lunch with my housemate, and we were talking about the election, and I wanted to show her a meme about Jill Stein voters, and from this, like, news account, actually Australian, called Cheek Media Co. And so I couldn't remember what it was called for in that moment. So, and then I remembered, so I just said cheek. It was cheek out loud in my head, but I was looking at my laptop that had Instagram up, but I didn't feel like I was taking in any information on the screen. I was more like in my head trying to remember, and then remembered and said cheek out loud in my head. And then the beep went off.
And so at the moment of the beep, is the case that as far as my experience is concerned, it's just saying cheek?
Cheek, yeah.
And is cheek C-H-I-C or C-H-E-E-K?
C-H-E-E-K. Cheek
Okay.
Media Code.
Okay. And the rest of the stuff that's a meme about Jill Stein or whatever, that's context as
That's
far as my
context.
experience? My
Yeah.
experience is just I've been trying to figure this out. That's before the beep. Now,
Yeah.
at the moment of the beep, I am saying in my head, cheek.
Yeah, and my laptop was on the table, but I was standing up and, like, kind of looking up like I am now, trying to remember. So I wasn't very present in, like, I was standing, I guess, but I wasn't really focused on any information that was on my laptop. I wasn't using any visual cues to try to remember. I was kind of, like, looking off in the distance and then just said cheek in my head.
Okay.
So in this moment, like, I would say almost 100% of my experience was the word cheek.
Okay.
Which is kind of
And no doubt there was some mental processing that got you to the word cheek, but that's not available to you. That's happening more or less behind the scenes or unconscious or whatever you want to call that.
yeah.
And the cheek is said internally, not externally.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I think I'm good.
I have a question. So when you say cheek, are you still in the process of trying to work out, like, the full you know, you've identified cheek, but you're trying to work out that Instagram account or whatever, are you still like trying to work it out, or are you going like cheek, that's what it is sort of thing?
That's what it is. That's like me realizing, even though I didn't say the full name, that's me like, it's kind of like good enough in my own brain.
Yep. Yep,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Cool.
Cool. Do you want to do beat 5?
Yep.
Number
Yeah.
5.
This one's kind of embarrassing. This one, I don't know if you guys know Bo Burnham, but he is a comedian singer. And I was listening to his album from the pandemic because that's how I'm feeling. And one of the songs is called White Woman's Instagram. And so one of the lines is listing off things that you might find on a white woman's Instagram. So the line was a golden retriever in a flower crown. And so the song was playing, but I was also like really focused on the words and then also visualizing a golden retriever in a flower crown as like a visual going along with the lyrics. So I was like looking at my screen, but I was absolutely not paying attention to, I don't even know what I was doing in this moment. I think I was probably still working on the menu. But I was like the lyrics, I was hearing the lyrics and singing the lyrics in my head. And then visualizing a golden retriever wearing a flower crown.
So hearing, singing, and then visualizing
Yeah.
this doggy. Would you say the hearing, singing is like the same, like part of the same thing, or two separate things?
I think as I'm going along with the song, it feels like one thing.
Okay.
It doesn't feel separate.
You're singing in your head, not out loud, right? Or
Yes. I might have been like mumbling, but I'm honestly unsure. I definitely was saying in my head the actual lyrics.
which was the golden retriever in a flower crown, right?
Yes. It's a great song.
And is there anything about pitch or inflection or tone? Any details?
I mean, I'm trying to sing it the way that he sings it. I won't perform it for you guys, but it's like a basic melody. And so I'm basically like imitating him in my head, but it is my own voice, my own singing voice, which is not great.
So it's
Can we go to the visual?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to the visual then.
Wait, but can I ask one question about that? Sorry. Just what is the split then, if there is one, in your experience of hearing his voice, but hearing your voice singing along? Or is there no distinction for you?
It all kind of feels like one.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I sing songs in my head, I try to make my voice sound like the singer's voice. So like if I'm listening to Bruce Springsteen, I'll like do a husky voice version of my own voice. And so that makes it feel like one. So I don't sound like Bo Burnham, but I like almost when I sing in my head, I try to make my voice sound like whatever I'm listening to. And so it feels more like one.
Yeah, it's just really concurrent.
Yeah.
So are you singing or you're hearing yourself sing? Is this a hearing phenomenon or a singing phenomenon?
This actually feels, even though it was a larger part of my experience, as in like I wasn't really paying attention to the work I was doing, it definitely felt more passive in the sense that I was like hearing my voice, but it didn't feel like I was like speaking or actively singing.
Okay.
Could you describe, this question might not make sense or it's too relative, but could you describe the clarity of this? Like, is it clear as if you were actually singing out loud, or is it different? Or does that not make sense to you?
No, I think part of the reason I'm having a hard time remembering if I was actually singing out loud, like I'm pretty confident this was inside my head, but there is a chance that I was singing out loud. So it in that sense, I guess maybe it's less clear. Or, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but um,
I
I
don't know. I
think it
think it
was in my
might be an
head.
impossible question because it's so relative. Like what somebody calls clear, another person might not. So I think it's an interesting question, but I don't know if it's a good one. But yeah, maybe let's go to the image now. Could you describe that?
Yep. It, I mean, it's like a stock standard golden retriever. Um, it's sitting, but it's not sitting in like a full scene or anything. It's just the dog. Um, it's kind of to my right, um, facing me on an angle, and it has one of those like, I actually used to wear this every day at school in fourth grade, but it's like a headband with fake Hawaiian flowers, and he's wearing it
He's-
on top of his head in front of his ears. The flowers are red, green, yellow, and blue, like more of a pinky red. Um, and they're like very clearly fake.
So they're clearly fake. Is is your attention on any particular part of this image, the flowers or the dog or the
The
flowers?
dog's kind of smiling, so I would like the dog's face plus the crown, but like mainly his face, less of his body, would be what I was mostly focusing on.
So mostly the dog's smiling face, but also the crown and the red green. Are you particularly drawn to the colors of the flowers, the red, green, yellow, and blue, or is it just that they happen to be those colors?
Honestly, the dog's face more than the colors in this instance. I was more drawn to like a smiley dog, I guess.
Okay. Smiley dog and a crown. Is there anything outside the stock? Like, is there a background? Are there borders? Or, no?
No, um, just his body, I guess, but that's not like I'm like mainly seeing the face and the crown.
Mhm. And you mentioned him being on the right? Or what's, like, visually, like, is it an overlay thing or just that that's where this image happens to be?
Um, I was like looking at my laptop, and I think he was on my right almost in a sense like because I was sitting on the couch during this, so I'm sitting on the couch, my laptop's on my lap, and then the like vision of the golden retriever is to my right, almost like a dog is like sitting at my feet or like looking at me while I'm sitting on the couch. Um, so that's just where it is spatially, I guess. If that helps.
Can I ask two questions on that, if I haven't proven?
Go
How
ahead.
big is the dog? Like, is it like real life size?
No, like weirdly, I'm describing it sitting next to me, but it's smaller. So it's like, I think potentially because I was still looking at my screen and still working, it's like off to the side, but smaller.
And then,
Yeah, it's not life size.
sorry, and then before this train goes past, how clear is that image in terms of, like right now, if I look at my water bottle next to me, like that's a very crisp, I'm looking at my water bottle. Comparatively, like you looking at that dog, like what's that like?
This is way more detailed compared to like the zoom squares that I was describing before, which were like slightly blurry. This, like, I can see the exact look on his face, like the twinkle in his eyes, like the leather style of his like lips, like very, very, very crisp, but mainly focused on the face. Whereas the body, I would say, is like kind of blurry. Like the head and the flower crown, like I'm picturing a very particular thing that I used to wear as a kid. And all of that, like I can see the white, there's the way the flower petals work, there's like a little bit of white that fades up into the color of the petals, and I can like see all of this. It's a plastic white headband with like little spikes that used to pull my hair back, and that's what the dog is wearing. So it's like very detailed on the face. The body not so much, but it is smaller.
So how does your experience, sorry if I go on a tangent, Russ, but like how you taking that in visually, how does that differ, if at all, to other things that you know are physically present in your environment around you? Or does it not?
No, it does. Like the biggest distinction between anything visual that I'm seeing is that I can still technically see past it. So like it's weird. I don't fully know how to describe it because it's not see-through. It's not like a lower opacity or anything like that. Like I can see it in full color, but I'm not like, oh my God, there's a dog here, because I can technically see the ground past it where it would be technically sitting to my right. It's like it's vibrant in color, but I know I'm actually looking at the ground. And it's a really hard thing to describe, but whereas everything else I can't see past. Like my desk right here is, it's there because I can't see the ground below it. Whereas where the dog was placed, I can see the ground.
I'm curious how it relates to the world. Like, does it seem like the dog image and the rest of the room is in the same space? Or because some people like might have mental image, like they might have a mental image and it's kind of its own thing, and then the world around it's a separate thing.
I would say in this instance, the dog feels separate just because it was smaller. It wasn't like a life-size image. Whereas the car example, that almost felt like it fit within the world around me. The visual of it was like comparable to other cars on the road, whereas this felt small, so that feels slightly separate from the world that I was physically sitting in.
Okay.
So it seems to me that maybe that we could clear up some of the questions that Mel and Julian asked. It's a bad deal to call this seeing an image, because she's not seeing an image, she's seeing a dog. It's imaginary, but she's seeing a dog. She's not seeing a picture of a dog and not seeing a representation of a dog. She's seeing a dog. It's not there. So she's got two seeings going on. She has a seeing of a dog and a seeing of the floor around her, and most of her liveliness is on the seeing of the dog. Seems to me.
Yeah.
I was interested in the tiara, crown, I guess we're calling it a crown. The crown. Is the dog wearing your crown, or is the dog wearing a crown that then when you describe it you would say, well, it's the same as the crown that I used to wear when I was a kid?
I mean, upon reflection, I realized I was visualizing the crown that I used to wear, but when I was in the moment, I don't think I was like, oh, that's my crown and the dog is wearing it. But like when I was just describing what the visual was, I realized I was actually thinking of the crown that I wore as a child, but in the moment I was not conscious of that.
In the moment I see this crown, and later on I can say, well, that's the crown that I used to wear.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And I would say, in sort of the recapping this, what I think made the first part of this conversation difficult is that the energy in Kerry's experience at this particular moment was in the seeing of the dog. That's, to my ear, that's where all the energy was. And we spent a lot of time at the beginning trying to figure out the details of the singing, but the singing wasn't the big deal. The singing was the background music for the seeing of the crown.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Number 6?
Okay, number 6 was at 2:44. Again, I was working on these menus. There's a lot of menus that I'm working on. And in my head, I was saying we have maxed out our edits on this one, which basically, again, going back to me, like rehearsing things that I'm potentially going to say to this client. This is me telling them, because they've had me redo this wine menu 3 or 4 times. So I was like imagining, as I was working on it, I was imagining myself saying like no more, essentially. There was no visual to go along with this. It was like purely just me looking at my screen, working on the edits, and then saying we have maxed out our edits on this one.
And do you see the screen, or is it the case that your eyeballs are aimed at the screen and your attention's all on the imaginary conversation?
I think it's not really part of my experience. I'm just mindlessly working. I'm not even confident that I was working on the wine list. I could have been working on a different menu, but I was I was definitely more focused on the words.
And these are good. These words presumably are practice that are going to be aimed at a particular person.
Yeah.
And is that person present? Does it feel like I'm speaking to him or her or whatever?
He's not present. No. I normally, when I like rehearse things in my head, I almost visualize myself saying it. So like visualizing me saying it on Zoom or visualizing saying it to the person. But in this scenario, it was just the words. And like for greater context, I was trying to decide if I was able to say these words to them, because I wasn't sure if we actually had maxed out the edits or if I was just super frustrated. So it was kind of like me working out in my head if I can say that, not speaking and not actually saying it to them, if that makes sense.
So I'm practicing saying it, but I'm not practicing saying it to the guy.
Correct.
Okay. And is the super frustrating present to you at the moment of the beep, or is that the context that leads to this?
It's hard to say because I've been frustrated most of the day. So I think maybe no, because what I'm saying to them is like trying to stop it. So I'm not like angry in how I'm saying it. The tone's not angry. It's more so just like we need to wrap it up.
Okay. Then I think I'm good.
I have one question. You mentioned trying to work out if you can say this. Like, is that present here, or is that more context?
I think that's context. I think that actually came sort of after I said it. I was like kind of rehearsing saying this, and then I was like, oh wait, can I even say that? Like, have we maxed out the edits? So it was more that like context was in reaction to this sentence.
Okay, so the context came later.
Yeah.
I mean the
the context was there, but like my decision about whether or not I could say this, that realization was after the fact.
So after the beep?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And I'm good on this one.
I am too. And I think we ought to do this again now that we've got the whole gang here.
Gang's all here.
Okay.
Do we want to figure out when we're going to do that, or do we want to do that by email?
Well, I will say, Julian, so I thought I was going to have to go into the office every day for this project that I'm on at the moment, but it doesn't look that way. So I now will have a little bit of sneaky flexibility in my schedule, so we can do earlier for you.
Okay, so maybe like 10, starting at 10 for me, which would be
noon.
What, an hour earlier than what we did today, right?
Yeah, an hour earlier for everybody. I also don't mind 11, actually.
Yeah, up to you. I don't mind this current time, but just in general, we can do earlier. I'm not hamstrung as much as I thought I would be.
Okay. What about you, Kerry? Is this a good time? An hour earlier, okay?
Yeah, I'm pretty flexible on timing. I can do earlier, later, or whatever. The first half of, I don't know if we're aiming for next week, but the first half of next week is really chaotic for me.
For me too. I'd rather do like 18th to 20.
Same.
A week from today would work, or the next, for me.
I'm fully blocked off on the 18th and 19th. So I could do Friday the 15th, or I could do Wednesday the 20th.
I cannot do Friday the 15th.
I can do Wednesday the 20th.
I can do Wednesday the 20th. At any time in the afternoon, that time.
Yeah, I can do Wednesday the 20th.
Okay. Should we say...
So do we want to go 1 hour earlier?
1 hour earlier.
1 hour earlier?
Yeah.
So what is that? 10 for me, 4 for Mal,
4 for me, yeah.
2 for Russ, 1 for Kerry, or did I?
Works for me.
Great.
Yeah? Okay.
Wednesday the 20th.
Yeah.
Send an invite. Cool.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
I'm going to stop the recording and people stay on like 1 minute.
Okay.